Log. As already stated, it is not a license requirement to keep a permanent log, although you can be asked to keep one by Ofcom officer investigating a case of interference, which may or may not turn out to have anything to do with you. Nonetheless, a log is very useful reference and will essential if you want to send and receive QSL cards or submit entries in a competition. A QSL card is a card from your distant contact confirming the contact took place. The log is also useful to show when you were not operating and would often be accepted as showing the interference did not come from you. Acceptance depends on the log being complete and up to date. The log should show the date and time of transmission. The mode used and the call sign of the station contacted. You may also want to record the transmit power and signal reports and brief details of other stations, such as the operator's first name. Times are always entered in UTC, Universal Coordinated Time, which for us is the same as GMT. Remember to subtract an hour during British summertime using the UTC is a worldwide practice to avoid confusion about which time zone the distant station is in. Many amateurs have their shack clock kept permanently on UTC GMT. Transceiver controls. During your training you will need to use HF and VHF transceivers and become familiar with their controls. Many VHF FM transceivers are designed for mobile use with straightforward controls. The main controls are power off. This may be a click position on the volume control or a separate tuning. This is the main dial that sets the transmit and receive frequency. Volume or AF gain. This is the control that sets the loudspeaker volume. Squelch or muting. The squelch control silences the audio when no signal is being received. You should adjust this to just silence the background noise in the absence of a signal. Other controls that may be present. Repeater frequency offset. Different transmit and receiver frequencies are used when working through a repeater. This might be automatically selected when tuned to the repeater part of the band you need to check. Power high-low. A switch or continuously adjustable control may be available to select your transmitter output power. CTCSS. The repeater CTCSS access tone C repeaters is enabled with this switch. This should be on for repeater use, but remember to turn it off when not using a repeater. Check you are using the correct tone frequency for repeater. Memory VFO. Some transmitters are able to select working frequency or main tuning dial or by using a preset memory. If the equipment has a digital display, then it may show the status of some or other controls, as well as frequency and on-air indicators. Usually there is a received signal strength indicator. The HF transceiver and VHF multi-mode transceiver needs extra controls to select the mode of transmission and make final adjustment to items like receive frequency or facilities that are either not present on simple VHF FM only equipment or are factory preset. In addition to controls above, you may find mode. Select between AM, FM, USB, LSB and CW, possibly also data, RIT. The RIT receive increment tuning slightly offsets the receive frequency from transmit frequency on the main dial and display. RF gain. Adjust the gain of the receiver's RF amplifier. Microphone gain. This adjusts the level of the audio transmit signal. This is set to avoid overmodulation. See modulation in Chapter 4, Transmitters. Wide, narrow. Different modes have different bandwidth requirements. That is the amount of radio spectrum they use. Selecting the right bandwidth allows a clean signal with minimum interference. Try changing it and listen to the effect. Carrier level or output power. This control varies the transmitter power output rather than the simple high-low power switch mentioned already. VFO1, VFO2. Many rigs have two VFOs, allowing quick switching between them, or using one for transmit and other for receive. This is called split frequency operation. NB. Make sure you are familiar with controls on the equipment you will be using. The controls will be very similar to those described here, and your tutor will be happy to show you those on the radio you will be using. Initial calls. Before calling, listen on the frequency and briefly ask if it is in use. It is possible you will not hear a distant station but cause interference to a nearer one that is listening on it. Some band plans show subsections that have specific channels for FM use. These include a calling channel or frequency set aside for the purpose of making CQ calls, which is an invitation for anybody to reply. FM calling channels are mainly used on VHF, UHF. On HF there are few FM calling channels, but there are centers of activity for other modes where specific calling takes place within a few kilohertz of the center frequency. How you call CQ depends on whether you are using single sideband mode or using FM. When on VHF or UHF FM, the frequencies are divided up into set channels rather like FM broadcast stations. A call on the frequency is easily heard and replied to on any band when using SSB. The tuning is much more critical, requiring fine adjustment to get it right, and it takes longer for your contact to tune to your frequency. An FM CQ call might be CQ. This is M7 ABC calling CQ. Anybody hearing that will be able to reply. If nobody does, then one more call might help somebody who was not sure they properly received your call sign. Further calls are unlikely to have a response. Wait a while before calling again. On SSB, two things are different. Without a calling channel, there is no obvious place to listen, so it is more common to tune around listening for calls. When a call is heard, this is a need to tune in accurately, which takes a little time. SSB, CQ calls need to be longer to allow for the accurate tuning and repeat it a few times to allow for those tuning across the band to find you. An SSB call might be CQ. This is M3XYZ, M3XYZ calling CQ, M3XYZ calling CQ. Be patient, you may need to call for some time to get a contact. It is quite possible that this will not be heard the first time, so only a second or two need to be allowed before repeating the call. It may well require many such calls before a reply is heard. If the replying station is slightly off tune, do not adjust your main transmit-receive frequency. The task of tuning is properly, or netting as it is called, is down to them. It is no use both of you trying to follow each other up and down the band. If after your second transmission he still sounds a bit off tune, then the receiver incremental tuning or RIT control may be used to make fine adjustments to your receive frequency without altering your transmit frequency, which the distant station will by now have tuned in to. It does take a bit of practice to get used to the pitch of the voice and the returning required. It seldom sounds as good as FM contact, but good results can be achieved. On a VHF or UHF calling channel, you should agree a working frequency or channel, and then leave the calling channel clear for others. It is bad manners to hold a conversation on calling channel. One of you, normally the caller, will check neighboring channels for a clear one, asking if it is in use, and then advise his/her contact of the chosen one and agree to make contact there. Bear in mind that it is possible that your contact will find the frequency occupied even if you didn't. Also, since you will then be on a new frequency, do not forget to give your call sign again. That ensures that you comply with the license requirement to be clearly identifiable at all times and to give your call sign as frequently as practicable. That, of course, also applies to changing the mode of modulation. to FM to SSB or CW, for example. Signal reports. It is normal for amateurs to say how they are receiving the other station by giving a signal report, as shown in Table 9.2. The report is based on the RST code of readability, signal strength, and for CW. Tone readability is on a 5-point scale from R1 unreadable to R5 perfectly readable. Signal strength is on a 9-point scale from S1 faint signals to barely perceptible to S9 extremely strong signals. It is common to use the signal strength meter, which is usually calibrated S1 to S9 and occasionally with numbers such as +10 and +20. These are even stronger signals shown on the meter. The calibration is very approximate but usable. On FM, the meter will give a steady carrier strength reading, but on SSB it will vary in time with the speech and the received RF level. You will need to give an average reading during a longer period of speech. Many operators give a 5 and 9 signal report, even when it is obviously not. It is more useful to give an honest report, but bear in mind the quality of the antenna will have a considerable influence on the signal. Here is the table, RST code. An HF SSB contact. On HF, it's quite likely that the station replying will not be from the UK. The UK and their command of the English language rather limited. The contact becomes rather more formalized, so each party has a reasonable idea what to expect. The sequence of events might be CQ, 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 CQ. This is M6ABC calling CQ. M6ABC, this is the PA. M6ABC, this is PA1 XYZ, PA1 XYZ, PA1 XYZ. Good evening, name here is Peter, location Southampton, over. M6ABC, good evening Peter, name Jan in Hilversum, your report is 5 and 9, 5 and 9, over. Okay Jan, your report is 5 and 7, 5 and 7, good signal. Name, location and signal reports are standard items in a contact. If communication or understanding is poor, that might be practically all that is said, especially if it is first contact. After that, it is common to exchange details of the transmitter and antenna. You may also be asked to QSL. This is only likely to happen for longer distance HF SSB contacts. QSL cards are normally sent for local VHF FM contacts. There are also internet QSO options which have the advantage of being much quicker. It is normal for amateurs to batch up their cards for sending to their country's QSL bureau, which also batches them for sending to the bureau in overseas countries. That can take a few months depending on the number of cards in a batch.